What is going on, Swoopers? Welcome back to another episode of Sideline with me and Dr. Ethan Alul, the osteopath. We're going to be talking all about Collingwood's injuries, touching on Darcy Moore, touching on Jordan Goey, who will be our main feature for today. Ethan, thank you so much for joining me in the morning. We've got our coffees here, ready to hit it hard.
Good to go.
Good to go, mate. So I guess we'll get the quick one out of the way first. Darcy Moore, AC joint, injured it late in the Fremantle game. At training yesterday, he was running, jumping, leaping, marking. The only thing he can't do is one-on-one work.
Yep.
What can you sort of tell us about
that? Seems pretty straightforward, pretty stock standard. I reckon there's probably an AC injury every week that we just don't hear about because they're relatively common.
Yep.
The AC basically connects your collarbone to your shoulder blade. There's a little joint in between there. Actually, if you have a close look at a lot of the players, you might see, I think Pendles has a good one actually. You might see a bit of that lump or that separation.
The ball that sort of comes in.
Yeah. So that's their old AC injuries. Obviously, you need a big one for that to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty a stock standard run-of-the-mill injury, and I think he'll be right to come back either, I think, for this week. Or is it next?
No, it'll be so this week's he's missing, and then it'll be next week against North Melbourne.
Yeah.
So what does that? Because he's at his training and he's arms up, marking the ball, handballing, dropping the ball, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So what does the AC joint? What is it weakening? It's just his contact.
No, to be honest, it's. Getting your arm all the way over your head is pretty provocative for that joint. So the fact that he's doing that already
he was
really
doing
positive.
It yesterday. Yeah.
I think the issue is with the one-on-one work, as you're trying to especially if you're pushing off, that can be quite aggravating for it. So that's probably why they're holding off on that.
Yep.
But overhead marking is a huge positive. Because when I test out an AC joint, usually it's that end range, up there, that's the most sore.
Yeah.
So if he's receiving, marks up there, he's doing pretty well.
Yeah, which is, was weird yesterday. Even just watching that, he did all the training. I was surprised that he was even sort of out there and not with the rehab group. The only time he was with the rehab group was when he was doing match sim. So obviously that's contact, and he wasn't out there, but everything else he was doing. So that's a good sign and someone that we really need for the next. For the season anyway. And it looks like they're just... Do you think... You remember a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about... I can't remember what player it was, but if it was the finals he would play, if this was first week, if this was the qualifying final, would they... Now that he's leaping and jumping, is that something that you would play for?
I probably would. Look, as always, it depends on the severity, but you can tape it up. You can tape in a little pad under there if you need to.
Yeah.
It's one that you can pretty easily play through if you had to.
Yeah.
The other thing is with that defensive work, it's that bumping directly. You're basically, when you're bumping someone, you're basically pushing them with your AC joint.
Right.
So, if there's an injury there's that bit of inflammation and swelling. Bumping and contacting that is going to keep sort of provoking it.
Yeah. So they're just being really cautious.
Being cautious.
Which is start of the season.
Yeah. And if you keep annoying it, it can niggle for longer than it needs to.
Yeah.
But he should be back pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I guess that's a good segue into, niggling longer than it needs to. Jordan Goey.
Yeah.
So he missed the start of the season with a bit of an Achilles inflammation, or they didn't really say what it was. It was just sort of Achilles, and then they leave him at home so he doesn't go over to Fremantle, so he doesn't get turned around. They say, it's only a week. He'll play next week. We just 5-day break, old body. We just want to look after him. And this whole year with Jordan Goey, Craig McRae comes out and he says, it's step by step. Sometimes we take one step back, one step forward, one step back. We're working on him. He went to Doha for his groins, and it looks like his groins are all good. That's got nothing with that. And we were talking about the Geelong game where he just didn't have any power like he usually does.
For sure.
And now it comes out that he's got a quote unquote new injury with his Achilles. What can you sort of tell us about that?
So with the Achilles, there's not a whole bunch of different injuries that can really occur with the Achilles. You're either gonna like snap it, which he obviously hasn't. You can tear it where it joins your calf muscle. So the Achilles is just an extension of your calf that connects it to the heel. Or the most common injury would be an Achilles tendon irritation. There's all sorts of different levels of that. And given his sort of history, I feel like he's probably got an Achilles tendinopathy, which just means that the tendon has been overloaded and now it's reacting to that and sort of not keeping up with the load that's being asked from it.
So when you say his tendon has been overloaded, like is this something that could happen throughout, the season so far, or was this something that happened at the start of the year where he was out with that sort of, Achilles inflammation or tendon, whatever they sort of said, and they just didn't pick it up early enough, and now it's become a bigger problem. Kind of like what happened with my shoulder. I didn't pick it up early enough, and now I can't can't throw a tennis ball properly.
Yes, I think they probably knew it was an Achilles tendon issue. But the thing is, if you rest it, say, for a week, it usually feels pretty good and you're good to go again.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it's healed. Which is feeling pain-free and having full healing is two different things. I actually had a bloke come in a week or two ago and I was treating him for something else, but I could see the back of his heel had a bit of a lump and looked a bit inflamed. And I sort of asked him, is it sore, poked it was all good. And then a week or two later, he came in and it was killing him. It was causing him heaps of grief.
Oh, dear.
So that's, another example where it feels okay, but it doesn't mean there's nothing wrong.
Right.
Which, totally different things.
So what are they doing? What do they do in that sense? So, we'll play. So this is what Craig McRae said about Jordan Goey's injury.
A week ago, sort of excited for giving some time for Geordie to progress his training and loads, and then there was something that just wasn't quite right. So we seek some advice, external advice, and it shows a fresh new injury, which is sort of explains some stuff, some power stuff in his game, but then also means there's another direction we're going to take with Geordie now, and it's into some rehab, and then hopefully getting back in a few weeks' time.
So he'd be carrying that for a bit?
No, it's expressed itself in the Cats game. Again, there's sort of some grumblings around an Achilles, which is something he's been working through, and he probably thought it was just part of that, but in fact, it was something slightly more. So, a little bit frustrating.
So after hearing that, what do they have to sort of do? Is it, there's a lot of talk, and I put up a video saying, maybe he does need, 5 or 6 weeks where he's not playing and just has a good training block, because you want the Goey to play well, against the good teams in finals. You don't want him to play well against North Melbourne next week.
For sure.
So what would be your sort of diagnosis or what to do, what your rehab?
Yeah, so my diagnosis would be an Achilles tendinopathy, and I think the reason they're sort of saying it's a new injury or, they're calling it a new injury, but I think that's a bit misleading. I think it's just progressed further than what they had expected. So you can pop up a photo actually of an Achilles tendon sort of timeline. It's not really a timeline, it's a continuum. And I think it's just progressed further than they suspected. So really the Achilles acts like a spring with running and jumping activities. So that's what they're going to have to manage the most. Everything else, you can do cardio on the bike, heavy strength training, that's all no problem. It's just that the running, jumping, any plyometric work, they need to be very cautious with managing that. And really a tendon takes 3 days to actually heal from those loads, which you pretty much never get in a footy season if you're playing every game. Particularly when it's at this tendinopathy phase, you need to allow at least 3 days, even 4 days between load where it's running, jumping, explosive stuff.
Right. So if he trains fully on a Monday, he won't be able to sort of run or jump or anything in that healing phase until, let's say, Thursday or Friday.
I would say
So,
yeah.
so how long, because at the moment, Collingwood on their injury report have him as TBC. Whenever I say TBC, it's not a good sign, right? So how long would you say until we sort of see him, knowing that in we've got 4 more games and then a bye, and then obviously the second half of the season.
Okay. I think they'd be aiming to get him back after that bye.
Yeah.
Like around 6 weeks.
Yep.
The reason they've put TBC, it's fair enough, to be honest, because you can have an Achilles tendinopathy for 6 weeks or a year sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, right.
And to be honest, you're not really considered like healed until you've played a full season with no re-aggravation of that Achilles.
Right.
Because it's something that can just grumble away off and on in the background for a long time. So I think given they've got that bye around that 6 week mark, I think that game is probably going to be the goal.
Yep.
In saying that, most protocols in terms of like studies that they've done on Achilles issues, usually it's like a 12-week intervention. So like rehab program or, whatever they do.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks, I would say, is probably the minimum at this point. Yeah.
So I think that kind of makes sense, and it kind of aligns with what everyone is sort of saying before we sort of knew what it was that he needs. We could see it that he needs a sort of training block.
Yeah.
And because, like you're saying, his job is to push off contests. It's to spring up, and if he can't do that, that's his part and parcel. So
100%. Like it's not just pain that comes along with a tendinopathy.
Yeah.
The tendon's actually changing its structure, changing its shape as it's trying to adapt, and you lose power and explosiveness through that process.
Yeah.
And that's why I also think it's been there longer than expected, because we've seen he hasn't been the same this season.
Yeah.
He hasn't had the power that we've seen in previous seasons.
Yep.
And that tells me that he's probably been carrying this like potentially since the start of the year, to be honest.
Far out.
So I think that's why we've seen him lose that explosiveness, because a tendon's job is literally to spring back and to help you, explode. And we've seen that lacking quite a bit so far.
So I guess the sort of final thing before, so let's just say, you're saying 6 weeks minimum. Let's just say it's 8 weeks, right? We're at the 8 week mark, training really well. He's training every second day or whatever it sort of may be. And we've got a big game coming up against, I don't know who it is, Hawthorn, let's say, right? Do you go, okay, he's trained for 8 weeks, we put him straight into the first team, or do you do what they've done to Tom Mitchell, have 50% in the VFL, 75%, see how you feel, and then come back into the big leagues?
It's a good question, and it depends how they want to manage it, I suppose, because it's not something you can't play with. Like if you really needed him to play, you could play with it. But I think that more conservative approach, where you're doing a bit of time in the VFL, is probably ideal, because no matter how you train, you can never replicate the demands of an actual game. And when someone asks you to give 110% at training, it's different to when you see that ball, on the boundary, and you've got to get
it's do or die
it's
in
different.
A game. Yeah, it's not do or die training.
And that's when Achilles loads or tendon loads are at their peak.
So
I think it would be a bit silly to go, all right, you're right to go straight back into, especially a big game. Because like I said before, you never really know how that tendon's gonna react. Particularly to match to a game, which it's hard to replicate that and test that out.
So it's just such a weird one, because as people who aren't sort of trained in all of this and just seeing it, you go, okay, he needed the rest. We were playing with one man down for so long. So now he gets that sort of rest. Darcy Moore comes back, and there hasn't really been any. There was the Lockie Schultz concussion, so he's in protocols. Actually, one thing I did want to ask you, and this is just a spring at you.
Yeah.
Harvey Harrison's ACL injury from last year, so he's been rehabbing it, and now he hasn't been on the track, I reckon, for about 4 to 6 weeks. We haven't seen him running on the track. I've seen him in the Collingwood gym doing sort of loads there.
Yeah.
What would be a common setback in ACL recovery? Would it be going too hard too fast and then it sort of deteriorates? Or?
No, not necessarily. I think that the hardest thing is managing the swelling.
Yep.
So sometimes like that knee can swell up. Say you try and run on it, it can swell up even like 8 months after
Oh wow.
after the repair.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the most difficult thing to manage. And obviously running, because of the impact and the force through the knee, it's totally different to like strength training.
Yeah.
So that can be a big setback, just trying to manage that swelling. And also, look, I'd like to think at this point, how long has it been, do you know, time-wise?
He did it August last year. And then, so August, September last year, he was sort of coming back. They were aiming for July, August this year, which would be VFL finals. But now they reckon they're going to put him on the long-term injury list, give him the rest of the year off, and come back next year.
Yeah. I doubt there's any complication in the knee itself.
Yeah.
It's probably other things, maybe his tendons, like you can have a hamstring tendon problem, especially, I'm not sure where they've taken the graft from, but especially if it's a hammy graft, often you can get hamstring tendon irritation as you try to build up your running loads again.
Yep.
I doubt it's a knee issue unless they're battling with still battling with swelling. But yeah, I'd say that is probably something else as he's compensating for that injury. And yeah, just trying to get those loads back. Other things can get a bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So when we get an update on Harvey Harrison, we'll come back and chat about that. Eth, thanks so much, mate.
No worries.
Appreciate it.
Always
Hope you
a
enjoyed your
pleasure.
coffee.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Thanks for the coffee.